So Robert Morris has officially been sentenced to 6 months in prison and 9 or 9.5 years of probation. He's got to register as a sex offender, and all of this coming out of the Oklahoma lawsuit or not lawsuit, but criminal suit that came out. If you don't know who Robert Morris is, he was the pastor at Gateway Church in Dallas, Texas. He founded that church, planted, very successful, written a ton of books, had just a ton of wealth. He specifically talked about giving, and that was kind of his claim to fame, if you will. He was a faith advisor for Donald Trump in 2016 on the Evangelical Advisory Board, and then in June of 2024, he announced his resignation and stepped away from Gateway Church, and it has been it's a fascinating story to watch in a heartbreaking way. He resigned over allegations of sexual misconduct by a woman who had claimed that she had abused him when she was 12 years old. This was from 1982, and she had claimed that she had been asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and that's kind of where all of this stemmed in the mid-2000s. She decided that she wasn't going to do it and instead sought money as like a compensation or just for her therapy bills and just things that she was going through mentally. They denied that. And then that's where a lot of this has come through. Now, a lot of people have been looking at this case going, okay, it was 1982. There's been this much time. Like, what happened with the statute of limitations? Apparently, there is a frontier era policy that allowed for when a plaintiff it leaves town, when a victim leaves the state, that it pauses the statute of limitations. And so they were able to do this. That's how they were able to bring the charges and to be able to do this. Clemenshire told her parents and church leaders about the abuse in 1987, but no one called the police. Morris later went through a restoration process and returned to ministry. And so this is kind of the problem with restoration in-house. There was nothing legally that happened for this. There was no criminal charges. There was nothing that was brought forth. And it really, really should have. Clemenshire sought acknowledgement and restitution. Again, this is in the mid-2000s, but she failed to sign the non-disclosure agreement, and that's where they were able to introduce this criminal charge. Morris pleaded guilty on Thursday, October 2nd, and he admitted to 5 felony counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child. There's a 10-year suspended sentence. 6 months will be served in a local jail, and then he will be on probation for 9.5 years. He's also required to register as a sex offender and be supervised by Texas authorities where he lives. There's an interstate agency, I guess, that does this. He was also ordered to pay restitution to the victim of $250,000 to $270,000, and also must pay the cost of his incarceration and any medical expenses that are there. The thing coming out of this, it's been very touchy because there is a lot of people who are outraged at the fact that it was only 6 months. People slamming the brevity of jail time. They're questioning the plea deal. Obviously, he pled guilty. That was a part of this. She actually spoke in court, and she said that she leaves the courtroom not as a victim, but as a survivor. She emphatically refuted Morris's previous minimalization of the crime, and she even said that there is no such thing as consent from a 12-year-old child. I was not a young lady, but a child, which is something that he has asserted. That's what made this so interesting. People were pulling clips from Robert Morris where they were able to see that he was openly talking about it, but the framing of it was way different than how he framed it. He framed it as, it was a young lady and I made a mistake and all of this stuff. Nobody knew exactly the weight of what happened here. The Oklahoma Attorney General, Gardner Drummond, he said that there is no tolerance for those who sexually prey on children. He called for the case all the more despicable because the perpetrator was a pastor and used his position. We know this. It's been a tale as old as time when it comes to church leadership, when it comes to people in places of authority, especially spiritually. They can use that and abuse people through it. And I think it's good that there's some accountability here. And I can also understand the outrage that maybe it's not enough. But I do think that even despite Gateway handling it wrong, Robert Morris handling it wrong, even the parents and the family members who knew about this for this young girl, even though that was all wrong. I do appreciate the fact that we are taking it seriously, just as people. I think that it's good to not be linked to statute of limitations or any legal proceedings of saying, well, we know this happened and we know that it was wrong, but now we can't do anything about it. I think it's good to know that that there's actually something there as well. And so it's a mixed bag when it comes to just thinking about it and what's the fallout of this. There's disappointment in some areas. There's great relief in other areas. I also think that it's important for you to know what else is coming out of this. Clemenshire and her father actually filed a civil lawsuit against Morris, his wife, and the church, seeking $1 million in damages. Morris is also suing Gateway Church over millions of dollars that he claimed he is owed from his retirement package. The way that he's framing it, I've also heard from some sources, is that because he donated his salary, he's now asking for that back. There's also a federal class action lawsuit by congregants of Gateway Church that their tithe money, their offerings, the giving that they had given to the church was unfulfilled. They promised 15% of tithes and offerings to go to missions. Obviously, some of that went to dealing with some of these things, and so I think it's an interesting kind of narrative. It's an interesting story to follow. If you're unfamiliar with it, I would get familiar with it because I think that it's a step in the right direction, even if it's not exactly enough with sentencing and different things like that. I will say it's a step in the right direction. Anytime we can acknowledge these things, understand that these things are happening, and seek for justice in this. And so let me know your thoughts. What do you think about Gateway Church? What do you think about some of the lawsuits that are happening? Do you think the prison sentence was too lenient? Do you think that it was fair? What are your thoughts on this? I would be interested to hear from you. Let me know what you think in the comments. I personally, for me, again, I think that it's a mixed bag. There's some disappointing aspects to this narrative and this story. I think that there are some good steps in the right direction when it comes to accountability and really making sure that people are held accountable for especially how they use leadership positions. And so let me know what you think. I would be so interested to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.